This week I'm going to be making a bar stool made from nothing but 2x4s, no mechanical fasteners. So let's get going real quick. I know my overall size that I want, so that's what I'm going to make first. I'm going to make a rectangle on the red-green plane, and the dimensions say the first one is the longer, and I know I want that one to be 18, 13. And I'm going 13 wide because that's the widest that my planer will accept. P for push-pull, and I want to go with a height of 24 inches, enter. Now this cube, box, 3D rectangle, all I want to do is just delete all the faces so I'm left with edges. I just clicked and deleted all those. Now if I triple click on the edge, the wireframe I guess you could call it, G for component, enter. Now this gives me the three-dimensional perimeter of my project. From here I can draw the top of this, so R for rectangle from this corner, and I'm going to draw a rectangle. The dimensions say the first one is the longest, and I want to have a height of 1.5 inches, comma, 1 inch, enter. P for push-pull, and I've already determined my length, so I can just drag it to that back edge. Spacebar, triple click, G for component, enter. Let's drop a little bit of color on here. I like to distinguish all of my parts with colors, that way you can easily look at the contrast and see that they are individual parts. M for move, control brings up copy, and this is going to be somewhat like a cutting board. It's going to be a multiple piece glue up for the top. We're making this entire project out of 2x4s. So I copied one and I didn't click yet, so I can say X12, enter, and that added 12 more to my original one, which is 13 inches long. From here I can make the legs, and I know exactly where they need to be, so R for rectangle, and I'm going to draw a rectangle and then type in 1.5 comma 1.5, enter. P for push pull, and I'll pull it all the way to the bottom. But the way that this is going to work is, once the top is done, I'm going to cut a rabbet in the top to accept the legs. So I actually need to pull this up another 0.75 inches, which should be at that midpoint. Now I'm going to make all of my pieces first before I start to make any of the joinery. So spacebar, triple click, G for component, enter. And let's give this leg a color. Let's just drop green on it. Now I'm going to be doing some copying, but I'm also going to flip so I have a left leg and a right leg. So M for move, control brings up copy, and I'm going to copy this to the other side, but I don't want two left feet over here, I want a right feet. So I drug it along the right axis so I can right click on it and say flip along components red. Now right now that did absolutely nothing, but when I go to cut the half lap on this side, it will update on the appropriate side for this leg. So the same thing here, let's click both of these. M for move, control brings up copy, and I'm dragging these along the green axis, so let's right click and say flip along the green direction. Now again, that did not do anything as far as these square legs go, but once we make our joinery it'll all make sense. I want to connect these two legs with a half lap piece, so R for rectangle, and let's just draw a rectangle on here. The first dimension is the smaller one, and that needs to be 1.5, so I can change that by pressing 1.5 comma and leaving the second dimension empty, that way it only modifies the first one. Press enter. P for push pull, and I'll push this to the thickness of my legs, which is a 1.5 by 1.5 inch square. Spacebar, triple click, G for component, enter. Now let's drop some contrasting color on here. And I want this to be 6 inches away from the bottom. So T for tape measure, let's go up 6 inches, enter. M for move, and let's grab this corner and just pull it up to that new line that I just made. Let's select this and delete it. Now I also want, I'm going to copy this one to the back side, but I also want one going from this leg to this leg. So R for rectangle, from here over to here, the first dimension is the shorter of the two, so I can type in 1.5 comma enter to only modify the first one. P for push pull, and let's push this to the back edge of the legs. Spacebar, triple click, G for component, enter. Let's drop another color on here, just any old color will be fine. T for tape measure, and I want this one to be just a little bit higher, so let's see, if it's 1.5 inches tall, then let's put a 1/2 inch space in between the two, and that means this will be at 8. Enter. M for move, and let's move the top of this down to 8, and I can delete this line. So now I've got my two pieces that are going to connect the legs with no joinery cut in them yet. And to make sure everything is updated on the same side over here, I can copy this over to here and then flip it, and then copy this over there and flip it. But an easier way when you're dealing with symmetrical pieces such as this is to just draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, and that gives me an exact center point. So I can select this, holding shift to select this, Q for rotate. Let's go from the center point, go from one side all the way over to the other. But I want to leave the originals there and make copies, so let's press Control for copy and drop them down. Now I can delete this line that it's no longer needed down here. Now what that did was it saved me from flipping left and right, because I have left and right pieces, and everything should update once I make all the joinery here. I also want to have a half lap and a piece going here. That'll give me a long grain to long grain glue connection, as opposed to a small little end grain connection up here. So let's grab both of these blue pieces, M for move. They are already in the appropriate orientation, so let's press Control, bring these all the way up, bring the copies all the way up to the top right there. So now the structure is complete. I just need to add my joinery. I no longer need this framework on the outside, so I can select it and delete it. And let's first make the excuse me, the rabbit on the ends of this seat. So let's right click and say make unique. You are no longer a copy. Same with you. That way if I make any cuts into these two boards, all of these are not going to update. Now let's double click to edit this part, R for rectangle, and let's make this rectangle, P for push pull, and let's chop this all the way to that back edge. Same with this one. Let's double click to edit this part, R for rectangle, and let's make this little rectangle, P for push pull. Let's push this all the way to the back edge. Now that made a rabbit along these two pieces. Now these two, let's just go ahead and delete them. It'll be the easiest thing to do. And let's grab both of these. Actually, you know what? Let's do that diagonal thing again. L for line from this diagonal over to this diagonal. Let's grab both of these. Q for rotate along the midpoint of my diagonal. And I'll go just like that, pressing Control to bring up copy. And there we go. I think that's it. So let's delete this line again. Now let's make the half laps on our pieces. What piece do we want to be on the top of our half lap? Do we want the horizontal piece or the vertical piece? I want the horizontal piece, so I'm going to cut away at the leg. So let's double click to edit this part. R for rectangle, and let's draw our half lap. P for push pull, and let's push it in half of the distance of 1.5, which is 0.75, enter. Now because I rotated all these parts in the appropriate orientation, all these legs, then all of the tops updated on the appropriate side. Let's do the same thing down here with this horizontal blue piece. Let's edit the leg, R for rectangle, and I want to show the horizontal piece, so let's cut away at the vertical piece. P for push pull, let's push this in 0.75 inches, enter. And that looks good. Same thing with these purple pieces. I want them to be visible on the outside, so let's double click to edit this part again. R for rectangle from here to here. P for push pull, let's push this in 0.75 inches, enter. Now all of these should have updated properly, and it looks like they have, but it still looks a little goofy, and that's because we didn't cut out anything on the horizontal pieces yet. So let's edit this horizontal piece, and if I want the front half to be shown, then that means I need to cut away the back half. So R for rectangle, this is half of the joint. Let's P for push pull, and let's push it in 0.75 inches, enter. Let's go to this other side, R for rectangle. I just messed up. Did I push that in? Yep, I only pushed it in 0.75 inches. Let's P for push pull. Let's push this in again 0.75 inches. I should have went 1.5 from the beginning. I will do that on this side now. R for rectangle on the back side of this joint. P for push pull. Let's push this in 1.5, enter. And what I did here was updated here. And now you can see the proper joinery of the half lap joint on these lower horizontal pieces. Let's do the same thing with these higher horizontal pieces. Let's double click to edit the part. R for rectangle on the back side of the piece. P for push pull. Let's push this in 1.5 inches, enter. Let's go to the other side. R for rectangle from here to here. P for push pull. Let's push this in 1.5, enter. And that should have updated over here, which it has. It's a half lap joint. Make sure all of my joinery looks okay. And it does. So this is the no mechanical fastener bar stool. This rabbet here on the top edge gives a nice wide long grain to long grain glue connection, which will be very strong on not only this edge but also on this back edge as well, on both of these leg assemblies. Now, what you have to be worried about with using solid wood is obviously wood expansion and contraction. Well, I'm going to make the top cutting board top, whatever you want to call this, with hopefully keeping all of the grain vertical so that the most expansion and contraction will be vertical and not horizontally. But the reason why I only have runners down here on this particular side and not up here like this one is on the sides is because even if this does expand and contract this way, this one single piece down here, this horizontal piece, will act as a pivot point. So I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit. What I'm saying is if the top shrinks, then the leg will come in just a little bit, and if it expands, it'll come out just a little bit. And because I only have one horizontal piece going this direction, it'll act as a pivot point, and the wood will bend slightly as needed. If I had another piece like this up here, then let me go back to it. Had another piece up here, then both of these would prevent this leg from bending in or out. So that's what I'm going to be banking on as far as this thing holding up over time. I don't see any problems with this, and hopefully it'll be fun to build. Now, before I call it quits with this particular model, I do want to make it a little bit more realistic as far as what I'm wanting to do with the final product. I do want to soften up all of these edges, and the way I'm going to do that is either a roundover or a chamfer. I'm not exactly sure yet, but to represent it here, I'm just going to use a chamfer. However, I do not want to mess up my original model here. So let's copy all of this. So select it all, M4 move, control brings up copy, and I'm going to copy the entire project over to here. Now, it is a copy, so what I do over here will be updated over here. However, it's still selected, so what I can do is right click and say make unique. This entire assembly is unique from this entire assembly now, in the same instance as if you would do a single component. But each one of these still remains a copy from one another. So basically, if I edit this part over here, P for push pull, it's only going to update this particular bar stool, not this one. So with the entire thing selected, you can make that whole copy unique from this whole copy. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to modify this one because this gives me the exact measurements, and the final edge detail really isn't that important as far as the plan goes. So from here, I can make all of the adjustments that I want. The easiest way to show the edge details just with a simple chamfer. So let's edit this part, R for rectangle, and let's make a 1/2 inch chamfer. So 0.5, 0.5, enter. Whoops, wrong plane there. Let's go 0.5, 0.5, enter. And that just basically gave me 2 points to connect here. I can delete this other half. P for push pull, and I push this all the way to the back edge. That gives me a nice chamfer. Now to make a chamfer going this direction, all I need to do is L for line and make a horizontal line right there. Select this line, M4 move, and let's move this in the same distance as our chamfer, which is 0.5 inches. Enter. Let's go to the other side and do the same thing. L4 line, making sure we stay constrained to the green axis. Let's select this M4 move and let's just push this in 0.5 inches. Enter. Now from here I've already got my shape, so all I have to do is edit the next part. L4 line, let's connect the dots, P4 push pull, let's push this through. Spacebar, double click to edit the next part, and repeat the process. L4 line, connect the dots, P4 push pull, let's push this all the way through. Now we just have a couple more to do over here. Spacebar, double click to edit the part. L4 line, let's trace this one more time. P4 push pull, let's push this in all the way. And I think we got a couple more on the other side. Yeah, here we go. Spacebar, double click to edit this part. L4 line, let's go from here to here. P4 push pull, let's push this all the way in. And the top is pretty much done. Let's do this outside edge on all four legs. So, kind of the same principle here. Let's double click to edit this leg. Let's select this vertical leg, M4 move, control brings up copy, and I'm going to copy this piece, this line, 0.5 inches, enter. Select the original line and let's move it 0.5 inches, enter. That just created a little chamfer right here. Well, if I look down that chamfer, I can just trace my line again just like I did previously. Let's double click to edit that part. L4 line, let's trace the chamfer. P4 push pull, let's push it all the way. Let's spacebar, double click to edit the next piece. L4 line, here to here, P4 push pull, let's push it again, and just keep repeating the process. All the way up to the top. Now, because, let's get out of here. Because this piece and this piece are copies, I've already made this chamfer right here, which means it updated right here. Let's go to the top, and this is the only little tricky spot, which it's not really too difficult at all. Let's double click this part, L4 line. You just got to think of the way that this is going to end up if you do it in real life. So let's P4 push pull, let's push this all the way to the top. And SketchUp says I can't go any further because I've got a point out here into space, and that'll create some weird geometry. So let's just L4 line to connect these dots here from this point up to here. And if I go to the view where I can use a crossing to select all of the area plus the outside edges and just delete it, then when I created this line and this line, it actually created this face. So now I can repeat the process over here. Let's double click to edit this part. L4 line, P4 push pull, push this away, spacebar, double click to edit the next part, L4 line, let's select that, or drop a line there rather, P4 push pull, let's push this up, and L4 line, you got to make these lines first, if not then you'll lose all of these faces. So let's spacebar, use a crossing to only select that, which is what we want to delete, press delete, and there we go. Let's see if I missed anything. The purple pieces on this other side. Let's double click, L4 line, P4 push pull, and there we go. I believe that's it. That's a nice chamfered edge, or you could use a round over bit. I'm not exactly sure which one I'll use, but it's a greater representation as far as the end product goes. But we can take that just a little bit further if we want, and let's go to our materials, or B for paint bucket, and let's change the colors to wood. And let's first select all of this. Let's change it to wood, and that's pretty much the color I'm going with. We're not going to see all these harsh lines, so let's select it all, right click, and say soften/smooth edges. Now all of these are 45-degree angles and a couple 90-degree angles, so if I was to go all the way past 45 and then past 90, things get kind of soft, obviously, for soften smoothing edges. Let's uncheck smooth normals and see what that does. I guess, that's okay. And that is a little bit more accurate representation of how the bar stool will turn out, hopefully. That's the game plan anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found this useful, and you guys have a great day.